5:30. Doug, are you ready?
Yep.
I call the Patton Township Board of Supervisors January 26, 2022 meeting at 5:30 to order. Announcements. I would like to welcome all new Patton Township residents. And if we don't have any other announcements.
Yes, if I could, please.
Sure.
Just note, we're going to pull item 6D, which is the funding agreement for the Grace Woods Preserve. We're at this point where we're looking at a separate agreement. We're going to take the elements of that funding agreement and wrap it back into the easement document itself. So I've been working with Ryan Hamilton from Clearwater Conservancy, and we'll be back to the board on February 9th to talk about that, and hopefully that'll be the last piece we need before we can get that easement filed and recorded. So again, pulling item 60, so we won't have any discussion on that tonight.
Okay. Any more announcements? Seeing none, as you are able, please rise and join the board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Moving on, next on the agenda is 1C, additions to the posted agenda. Are there any supervisors that would like to add an item or items to the agenda at this time? Supervisor Whitman?
Yes, I would like to add to the agenda a discussion of posting signs concerning our mask ordinance at establishments that it pertains to.
Any other supervisors that would like to add to the agenda at this time? Supervisor Trevino?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would like to add to the agenda a consideration of an amendment to our masking ordinance that our board passed last week, 2022-623.
Okay. Seeing anyone else? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passed to add these two items to the agenda. All right.
Where did you want
Huh?
to where did you want to talk about those tonight after?
Probably after the public comments. Is that
Okay.
all right? Moving on, next to the agenda is public comments. Residents may address the board on issues of interest to the township. Comments related to a specific agenda item should be deferred until that point of the meeting. If you are attending by Zoom, please use the raise hand feature of your Zoom application and wait for the chair to indicate that it is your opportunity to speak. If you are attending in person, please approach the podium and wait for the chair to indicate that it is your opportunity to speak. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Next is the addition to the posted agenda.
Somebody on Zoom.
Oh, there's two people who would like to make comments on our public comments. Miss Nalini Krishnakudi
Oh.
and Taylor Hanning.
All righty. Dr. Nakuti?
Go ahead, Nalini. You're muted. Please unmute.
I apologize for that. Good evening, Chair Rob and Patton Township Board of Supervisors. My name is Nalini Krishnankuti. I'm a resident of State College. And I'm one of the founding members of the Panapeda Circle, which is a local group that was founded last year by about 8 to 10 concerned APEDA community members from the center region amidst rising anti-Asian hate. APEDA here stands for Asian Pacific Islander Desi American, and our goals were to increase APEDA representation, visibility, and elevate APEDA voices. And so on behalf of the Panapeda Circle, I want to convey thanks to Chair Rob and the Board of Supervisors for considering issuing a proclamation this evening, recognizing February 1 as Lunar New Year in Patton Township. As you all know, it's celebrated by many Asian communities around the world and Americans of Asian origin, including those of Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Tibetan, Mongolian, Singaporean, Malaysian, and Filipino heritage. And though the traditions across these cultures are varied, almost all focus on strengthening family. And with APEDA being the largest racial minority group in both Patton Township and Center County, and over 10,000 Center County residents being of APEDA heritage and contributing in many, many different ways in our community, this proclamation you're doing or considering today will have tremendous meaning. It will be instrumental in creating a sense of belonging for everyone celebrating this holiday locally, their whole selves being recognized by their community. And as I'm originally from India, I do not celebrate Lunar New Year, but I know the effect this proclamation can have. I have lived in the Center region for almost 35 years and felt an irrational joy even when I saw a tiny board in a local store like Walmart or Macy's or Giant wishing customers a happy Diwali, something I celebrate in the fall. And so I know that this can be multiplied many times over when elected leaders like you issue such proclamations. On February 1st, I will be reaching out to friends and neighbors, learning more, who do celebrate it and learning more about their traditions and experiences, and I invite everyone in Patton to do the same. For me, this has often been a gateway to creating lasting bonds and a sense of genuine community and belonging. I want to take a minute to share about the Panapeda Circle's journey. In the last 9 months, we have grown and had broad local impact with the help of friends and allies like you in government and in the community. We have been able to assist some APEDA residents who face anti-Asian hate, participated in local events and panels to elevate APEDA voices. A flyer we created for Lion Bash on how to report hate and bias incidents is being shared with the larger community by organizations and other local governments. In April to May of 2022, an exhibit in partnership with the Belafonte Art Museum called Into the Light, a tapestry of art and culture from local Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans, will highlight APEDA artists as part of the Center County experience. I came here today in public comment to actually offer my sincere thanks to all of you for considering issuing this proclamation of Lunar New Year in Patton Township, and also to thank you for all your work in nurturing an inclusive community in Patton Township where everyone feels like they belong. What I wanted to say on behalf of the Panapeda Circle was that if we can be of any help in any of your events and efforts in the future, please feel free to reach out to us, and thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the board?
There's one more.
Yeah.
All right.
We have one more.
Okay,
Pam Taylor Haney.
all right.
Yep. Hey, guys.
Taylor, how are
Hey,
you?
one, I guess, question I have, I'm sort of new to watching the meetings and participating. I noticed that there wasn't any pictures or any bio of any of our supervisors, any of you guys on the website. Is that something that might be good to add so that people who are unfamiliar with our township or haven't been involved in the past could put that up?
Sure. Taylor, we're working on our website as you brought it up, and we will be looking for ideas like you just mentioned to add to our new website. So thank you very much.
Oh, perfect. I also have some commentary on the mask ordinance that was put in place. Is that for this part of the discussion, or is that coming up for public comment later?
It's not
Uh,
bad.
Why don't you hold it until, I mean, the board's gonna talk about amending the ordinance here in a few minutes, so if you can hold
Yep.
until then, that would be appropriate.
Okay, no problem, but yeah, definitely would strongly recommend the bio and stuff, it definitely would help.
All righty, thank you very much.
Yep.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Whitman?
Yeah, I would just like to address Taylor and again, thank him for his suggestion. And just to let you know that there's been a committee working on this for a couple of years. We've been waiting for the new website, but that is specifically one of the issues that we have discussed, and in fact, one of my pet peeves, so we'll definitely see that. Thank you so much for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Abram.
Anyone can see my picture if they want, but I've been thinking of giving them away as prizes. First prize would be 1 copy, and second prize would be 10 copies.
All right. Thank you. Moving right along, anything else that, public comment?
No.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the additions to the posted agenda. Supervisor Whitman, would you like to start first, or?
Certainly, and I'm sure it will overlap with what Dan Trevino is going to say. I received an email from a citizen with a suggestion that Patton Township produce signs that would be available to all businesses or all establishments that are affected by the standing ordinance on masking. And I understand there's a couple of ways we could do it, either by emailing and asking the businesses to make a copy and post, or I did hear through a correspondence from Mr. Erickson earlier that the township does have funds to print up such signs. If we do that, I'd recommend perhaps getting them laminated or on heavy paper. So I think this would increase greatly the compliance with the ordinance. I think it's important to have, or it's more effective to have uniform signage, and to also have it state that it is part of a local ordinance requiring the wearing of masks. And just with also the observation that without such signage, many customers, certainly citizens in Patton Township, are not aware of the ordinance, so this would be helpful. Yeah. So that is my request. I don't know whether we need to discuss it and agree on that, but that's what I put forward.
So do we need to vote on this now, or can we wait to Supervisor Trevino?
At your pleasure,
Okay,
however you'd like to manage it.
I would like to vote on that.
Can I make the motion?
You can make the motion.
I make the motion that Patton Township print and distribute signage that will be used on establishments affected by the masking ordinance.
All right.
I'll second.
Second?
Madam Chair, can we,
Discussion?
are we going to discuss this?
Yeah,
Okay, I
discussion.
thought we were voting right now.
No, we got a second. Next is discussion. So
Got it.
Supervisor Magruder.
Yeah, I guess my question was, so the hope is that we would print these signs and put them in local businesses.
Right.
And I guess my wondering is, I guess, responsibility for conveying this ordinance. Are all businesses not putting out signs saying masking is required?
Thank you for that question. Yes, this correspondence was predicated on the two experiences in town. One at Trader Joe's concerning no signage, having a conversation with the manager, saying it was a decision that was going to be made at the corporate level, and then another conversation at Aldi's where there was also no signage. So either it hasn't been communicated, or that hasn't been listened to at the ends of it. Or maybe it's, yeah, maybe they just don't know. They're very busy. I don't mean to, be overly critical here, but the fact is that the ordinance is in place, and it does require that establishments, either places that are open to the public or have public spaces in them, need to post a sign detailing our ordinance and telling people that they need to have a mask when they're inside that establishment.
Yeah, and so I guess, is it the responsibility of the establishment to be up to date on whatever ordinances we have? Or is there like a mailing list that we send this stuff out telling businesses, hey, this is what you need to do?
I'll leave that to Doug to answer.
We rarely do these things, so the last time, we didn't send any notices out, but there was pretty good compliance. I guess this time compliance is much lower, so I think the board's approach of distributing signs is probably, and then communicating probably in writing also to the management of these facilities that they're required to post these signs is probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, because my worry is that we're now going to every establishment to put up a sign, or we're trying to pick and choose and figure out which, establishments don't have these signs, and then posting something, but then thinking about what's the recourse. So if their management or corporate offices haven't gotten back to it, are we still actually allowed to put the mandate in that business?
Well, we aren't going to post the signs. We'll give the signs to the business and tell them they're supposed to. Our code enforcement officer, the last time we did this, he went around, it was probably a little later then, it was just, we did have some flyers we were handing out. They weren't signs necessarily. But if we task him to do this, he'll get around. It'd probably take him a week or so to get around to everybody, but it's feasible. Like I said, I've noticed that, there's not a plethora of signs out there at this point, so we should probably up our notification.
Right.
And I have no qualms with it, just to be clear. It's just again, when we're talking about like compliance with these ordinances, for an individual level, we definitely want that, but also for organizational, institutional level with businesses, we would hope that our business partners would be responsive to these ordinances, because when they're not, it sends a message clearly. And so I'm all for this, and, responsibility, I think, is likely on the businesses too. So I want to make sure accountability is had. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Supervisor Avon.
I think this was highlighted last night at the, 2 nights ago, at the general forum meeting, where a representative of the hospital was there and said that the caseload is higher than it was even in the first waves a year or two ago, and so he was quite concerned about that, even though nationwide the Omicron variant seems to be diminishing. So I agree with Sutan and the idea of doing this.
Okay. So can I call for a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Okay. Supervisor Trevino.
Yes, we received a correspondence from a pastor of a local church questioning whether places of worship should also be exempt. I noticed the wording in the ordinance under Section 3, wearing of face coverings exemptions. Number 1B does say persons whose religious beliefs prevent them from wearing a face covering would be exempt from being required to wear a face mask. So, but that addresses an individuals, and so the question is whether a place of worship ought to be included under our exemptions. So I'm suggesting adding these words at the beginning of that sentence, places of worship and then the rest is what's already printed. So it would read places of worship and persons whose religious benefits prevent them from wearing a face covering.
And that covers it. Supervisor Abrams?
The only problem with that is that I think that the virus is an atheist.
Thank you.
I mean,
Okay.
I don't mind passing it, but you don't want to have super spreader events.
Any other supervisor comment?
Yeah, I guess I'm just curious, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't sort of speak to it too much,
Supervisor
but I guess the curiosity I have is, yeah, why religious institutions would be exempt from this. I was looking at some, I don't know if you call it case law, things that have been brought up in the courts, and when it comes to them being excused, people being excused from masking based on religious grounds, and a lot of those didn't necessarily hold up in court. And so, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what's the rationale actually for excluding religious organizations.
Doug? I'm in agreement to putting the exemption of places of worship. It gives the organization and the place of worship the responsibility to do what's right. And with us putting an exemption in our ordinance, it covers us as it goes before. As you can see, the emails that we receive, the pros and the cons. At least, I'm looking at it, it gives a freedom to the places of worship to protect their parishioners as well. As we're not overstepping the bounds and forcing our police officers to enforce our ordinance to go into a place of worship and find individuals. It's called the house of God in many ways. And we're not going into individual homes telling you to wear your mask. So I'm looking at it as a protection for us, that we're covering all the aspects of worshiping at a mosque, synagogue, a church, that they have the freedom to make the decision to protect their parishioners. Any other comments from Supervisor Whitman?
I would suggest that the wording be slightly changed, that item B be left as it was originally, and that we simply make a new item that says in places of worship. Because I believe as the amendment is suggested up there, it implies that a place of worship and religious beliefs are synonymous, and they aren't. I think if this is an individual church that, because they believe they are doing right by their parishioners, I don't know that it's necessarily driven by a religious belief, but there are some religions that may have a belief against any covering of the face. So it's a matter of semantics, but I think that it's a distinction that I would recommend. The end result is the same thing.
Yeah.
So just make a separate item saying, and I can't see the entire thing, but it would be item E or F or G or whatever. And just simply say, G, in places of worship.
Any other supervisor has a suggestion on this? Supervisor Abel?
My wife and I are volunteering this Sunday at a church where we're having a fundraiser for, and people buy tickets to buy soup. And even though I don't attend that particular church, I hope the people that are coming to purchase the soup will be masked. I really think that the government should be neutral on this. That we're, a person's faith is their own.
So what is your suggestion on our proposal?
Well, I'm torn between like voting for it just so I don't create a stir, or not voting on it because I don't think it's necessary. I think it's sort of already covered. The police are not going to go into churches to arrest people.
Well, I'm going to make sure if it's passed, that it's followed. So can I get
I wonder,
Supervisor Magruder?
could this be something that we push until the next meeting or down the road? I mean, this was one inquiry from one religious institution, correct? So yeah, if we could just push this vote down the road so we can get a little bit more clarity. Is that possible?
If I may?
Yes.
So the board cannot, because this involves an ordinance and requires public notice of what you plan to do, the board can't make any actual changes to the ordinance tonight. So, the issue Ms. Whitman brought up about distributing signs is actually outside the ordinance. That's just direction to staff to do something. We can go ahead and do that. But to make changes to the ordinance, as I said, we'll require public notice. So the board should decide what changes they'd like to make. It sounds like the board should probably have a motion and a second and take a vote to make sure everybody understands where everybody else's position is on the proposal. That, then what comes out of that motion will be put into an amendment for the ordinance that would have to be advertised, and then we could actually, the board could actually vote on that amendment to the ordinance at our next meeting on February 9th. So there's a two-step process that you'll go through tonight, discussion tonight, to decide what amendments you would like to put in, and then another vote on the February 9th to actually make the changes so that they're enforceable and legal.
All right, so I want to make a motion to amend.
I think she's
Do I-
waiting for a motion from somebody.
Yes. Can I get a motion to amend until our next meeting?
I have a motion to amend.
Okay, second?
What are you proposing to amend? My suggestion or Betsy Whitman's suggestion? I mean, there's two options that are listed right now. Either just add 4 words to number B, or leave number B the way it is and create section G, which says in places of worship.
I think Doug went with Betsy suggested.
No, it's up to the board to determine.
He's making the motion.
Yeah, the board will need to be specific about, since we have 2 suggestions. So the motion should say either amended as shown in section B, 3.1B, or create a new section 3.1G with that wordage.
So, Sue Tom,
So can I create a motion then to create a new section in 3.1G to specify whether there can be a carve out for places of worship?
can I get a second?
I didn't hear whether it was B or G. Which one?
G.
G, thank you. I'll second that, that's fine.
Discussion? I'm sorry, Supervisor Avery?
I don't actually see the wording in front of me, but I wonder if places of worship can be lumped in with private residences, because they're not public, and religious institutions can or cannot be public, but we don't decide that.
Supervisor Whitman, I'm sorry.
So I actually was wondering if we could direct staff at this point in the discussion to answer that question and just do some research in general on how places of worship are treated under mask ordinances. And I'm sure various supervisors will do their own research, but it would help if we could get some staff to do some also. So
That's a good
I would
idea.
make that suggestion.
All right.
And I would note that there's also somebody in the audience that
Well,
wants to speak.
we got a motion on the table, and
I think we can,
can we, Doug,
I think we
can we,
can have audience discussion.
Yeah, you should ask for audience input too.
I think so.
all right, who do you see?
But there is, just to remind everybody, there is a motion on the table, so the discussion is about adding section G to this,
Yeah, that's
to the
what I-
ordinance. So I'm gonna take the B one out at this point.
Yeah, it's Joan Bouchard.
John?
Joan.
Joan? I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it.
It's hard to see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I don't know whether this is the time to mention this or not, but you'll tell me and tell me when I should come to it. I want to know whether the signs are going to be sent out to any businesses that are supposed to be displaying them, or whether the businesses are going to ask for them. Because I know of at least one business that does not intend to comply, even though it should, and that concerns me.
Well, since that's not on the table.
I think the direction from the board was that we would send the signs out to businesses or distribute them to the businesses.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. The vote's on the table.
One more
Do one more.
comment.
Taylor.
It's really hard to.
Yeah,
Taylor, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Yeah, I think I like the call out of excluding places of worship. I think it's an area that can create some hostility, and so taking that off the table as something and calling it out specifically is a good thing.
All right, thank you very much. Back to the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Thank everyone for their discussion. Moving right along. Next on our agenda is presentations and public hearing. 3A, Doug, would you like to take that? Which is the CATA route disruption.
Yeah, just real brief recap. We've been corresponding back and forth by letter to the CATA Board of Directors through their chair. The latest response was a December 23rd letter from Board Chair John Spachalski, going through their rationale of why they suspended the A route and why they're unable at this point to provide any replacement service. If you're interested in additional background, there's other correspondence that was attached to both the November 10th and December 8th Board of Supervisors agendas that are available on our website. The CATA chair has offered to meet. We have Pam started ask by email Monday afternoon. I've had a little bit of, we need to do some more follow-up, but right, now tentatively, we're looking at February 23rd to have the CATA chair and the CATA general manager and whatever other staff they'd like to think necessary to come and talk to the board, provide a presentation, and we'll work on finalizing those plans here in the next couple of weeks, I think. Turn it back to the board. I think Mr. Mark Parfett, who's our representative to the CATA board, is with us.
Great.
Back to you, Pam.
Mark, if you're on, can you give us an update on this issue?
Sure, I don't have much of an update. There's still no service on the A route to Park Forest Village or the G route to Graysdale Vista Woods and Valley Vista Park, and there's still no planned timeline to return that service.
Okay, will you be present when they accept our meeting on the 23rd?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
I also would like to, at this time, thank Mark for speaking up at the CATA board on behalf of Patton Township. They had mentioned there was no response from our board, and since I had already talked to one of the representatives, Mark was able to inform the chair that we had reached out to on that matter. So Mark, thank you very much for taking that initiative to let them know that Patton Township is staying on top of it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right. Moving on, next on the agenda is 3B, the request for Cnet sponsorship. Doug, would you like to introduce?
Yes, we had a request from Mr. Charles Dumas, representing the LAF Theater Company. He's requested sponsorship through Cnet to tape a presentation that's titled God's Trombones. There's a description of the program included in the agenda. Note it includes dramatic reading of James Weldon Johnson's collected sermons with choral music, and the event scheduled for late in February at the Good Shepherd Catholic Church. I initially received this response, which is normal, for additional Cnet sponsorship. This one I reviewed, and I replied to them that I couldn't approve this on my own because of the nature of the program, because it includes religious items, a religious title, religious sermons, religious music, that it looked like, to my interpretation, that it was not in conformance with our donation policy that was approved back in 2015, which prohibits donations made to religious organizations. So I offered that we would bring this item to the board and have the board take a look at it and make a determination. As noted towards the bottom of the page there, page 4, the board has several options they could take to approve or disapprove this request. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board.
All right. Mr. Dumas or Mr. Watson? Thank you.
Do I have to put my mask on? Do I have to keep the mask on?
Oh, sure.
Okay, because I just feel like you won't be able to hear me clearly otherwise. So, hi, I'm Terry Watson. I am a resident of the Patton Township. And the reason why I'm coming up before Professor Dumas is because this project is, even though it is called God Trombone, the donations are not going towards a religious organization. This is a program that our CCU is also advertising, and because the benefit is going towards the PA Innocent Project. We've had discussions in the past about how people of color disproportionately are sent to jail and being exonerated because of being found innocent. That is the reason for the purpose of this particular project. So this is one of the things that we are supporting, and I wanted to make sure that the supervisory board is aware of that. So besides that, I want to bring up Professor Dumas.
Thank you, Chair. Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, is it all right to share with you some of the information about the project? Is it possible?
Sure.
Thank you. The Racial Unity Network, what we call RUN, is sponsoring a benefit performance of God's Trombones for the Pennsylvania Innocence Project at the Church of Good Shepherd on Friday, February 25th at 7 p.m. The production will feature Essence 2, directed by Tony Leach, and various actors and pastors and other folks from the community, including Bonnie Schmaltz, myself, Professor Anne Marie Mingo, Harold McKenzie, Jason Lamar Yates, a past alumni, and various others. God's Trombones was written by James Weldon Johnson, the author of Lift Every Voice and Sing, the African American National Anthem. Admission is free. Donations are gratefully accepted, and the donations will go, as Terry has already said, to the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. A couple of things to note. This event will go on, no matter what happens here. What we are requesting is for the Patton Township okay the filming of it, because at this particular point, we would like other people to have access to it who aren't able to go to the church, so that it will happen, you know. And second, it's not really a religious event. I know it's kind of strange. It's going on in Good Shepherd Church, and there's some pastors involved, but it's because the nature of it is reading sermons, and I, being part of the theater company, went out to find folks who could deliver sermons. It used to be, when we did it before, we've done it several times, as you can tell from the project memo, we've done it for the NAACP in Washington, we've done it at Eisenhower Center, and we're looking usually to use actors. But this time, because it's the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, we thought we would ask some pastors to participate. I understand the sensitivity in terms of separation of church and state. I understand it perfectly. But this is not a church event. Let me repeat, it is not a church event. It is an event to raise money for the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. The participants just happen to be, a few of them, pastors. You will note on here that I am listed as a deacon. I am a deacon in process from the Catholic Church, but I would no way consider myself a religious person in that sense of operating a church or functioning as a member of a clergy. So I will leave it open for questions and comments.
Questions? Supervisor Whitman?
So I would just like to say that I did my research on this and was familiar with James Weldon Johnson, and also as the author of the Black National Anthem, which is indeed a beautiful piece. But I'd also like to share with the board and with the public that James Weldon Johnson is a poet, and the entitlement of his piece, God's Trombone, 7 Negro Sermons in Verse, is actually the title of a book, and this is a volume of poetry. And Johnson himself explained this work as, quote, art-governed expression, unquote, of traditional black preaching style. And at the time that it was presented, or written back in the late 1920s, it actually was a milestone, or actually was one of the first expressions of some of the style of sermons in the Black community, and it was presented as a cultural item and not as a religious item. And I actually have a video that I would like to share. It was, if we need to, the board needs to see it. It's 1.5 minutes long, and it's about a review of a performance that was done in Syracuse by the Paul Robeson Performing Arts Company. And I have a few words of the director of that program I'd like to share, and they're actually, I took them from this presentation, where she says, this is an African American, a Black American history or cultural classic. It's almost 100 years old, still relevant today. It's a big part of American history. It is indeed a biblical story, but its relevance is not just to Christianity, but to all life. Lessons and stories we need to hear, and principles we all need to talk about. So I would argue that this is a work of art, not a work of religion, and we certainly can go to any gallery around this nation and see many works of religion that are displayed as art. In fact, some of the most ancient ones are religious because culturally those were, or historically, those are the only articles of art that were either commissioned or saved or whatever. So, yeah, I wouldn't have any problem personally supporting this, and I would argue that in fact it's a question of art and not of religion.
Supervisor Trevino.
I agree with Supervisor Whitman. I don't think this is, if we vote to support this project, I don't believe it's a violation of our donation policy, because this is not a religious organization. And that the wording in the policy is donations will not be made to a religious organization. So therefore, it's an artistic organization.
Thank you.
So they qualify for a donation, I think, under our policy.
Supervisor Abrams, I'm sorry.
So it's a work of art, and it just happens to be presented at a religious place, but that's not the purpose of it. It needed a place to show this, and this way it gets out more. And I think it's an important message. I was touched by the message of the late Mr. Lewis, who said, we're not going back, we're going forward. And that's a big concept.
Supervisor Magruder.
Yes, one question and just one, I guess, thought. Of the sponsors listed on item 3B1, the Racial Unity Network, on behalf of PA Innocence Project, Essence of Joy, and LAF Theater, I'm wondering which of these entities are local, nonprofit, or tax exempt?
All three are local, all three are nonprofit.
Okay.
And to add to, thank you, Supervisor Whitman and Trevino and Abrams, let me just add another piece of information. The first time this was performed at Penn State, it was done by Fred Waring, who was not a religious organization as well. But they're all local and they're all not-for-profit.
Yeah, also, my worry is other actors that don't have the best interest at heart. I'm worried about them trying to utilize our sponsorship in a way that can just be problematic based on the religious, in this religious context. And so I guess my question too is, in what way will this sort of like serve a public purpose and enhance the health, safety, or welfare of Patton residents?
Well, first of all, it's taking place in Patton at Good Shepherd. The other way, it is presenting, as Supervisor Abrams has already pointed out, it promotes the culture of African Americans during Black History Month, and allows people to see the rich heritage and the rich history that we have as a people. It's been done several times, even here at Penn State, and it always has the effect of getting people happy and joyous. And the people and the citizens of Patton would be available to that particular process as well.
So it seems like this would bring the community together, uplift.
The purpose, as we pointed out in the information that you have with the project memo, the purpose is to get the word out about the Pennsylvania Innocence Project and to raise some funds. This is an organization that's just beginning. Run is sort of sponsoring it, but it's a way to do those two things as the primary. The fact that people come together, and Lord knows in these times, people coming together in a pandemic is a positive thing in my heart. So that's a tertiary effect, but it's not the primary effect to bring people together. It's primarily to get the word out about PIP and to promote African American culture and to raise some funds for the organization, non-church organization.
Supervisor Abrams?
I think if we pass and allow this, we should document it as being an art presentation. And as for any other organizations, we take these things one at a time. It's not, some people are worried about the domino theory, that you let one person do it, then everybody's going to do it. And the only real place I've seen the domino theory work very well is with respect to pizza.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, Supervisor Tribino?
Thank you. Charles, I'm curious about whether you're approaching other municipalities. Are you asking Patton to be the sole sponsor of this event for Cnet?
The way it wound up at Good Shepherd, and it's interesting, we started off trying to get the Eisenhower space, the Eisenhower Auditorium, but they had conflicts during February. We wanted to make sure it got done in February for obvious reasons. And it turns out that Tony already had a date in Good Shepherd for Essence 2, and said since we couldn't get Eisenhower, it's all right to use that date to promote this particular event. So we're not going around trying to get this done in other places. What we're trying to do is to do it, like I said, for PIP. And one of the reasons we wanted Cnet is that we wanted it to be available for everybody within our community.
So a follow-up to my question is, what kind of money are we talking about for a sponsorship?
Because of the way Cnet calculates our member contributions, it's a little hard to tell you exactly what it would cost. I'm going to say it's a matter of a few $100s that we will pay 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah.
So it's really not, I don't think it's a financial issue that we're discussing.
Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Magruder?
There won't be any branding for these other entities, would there? So like on video, is the expectation like advertising?
Oh, no. You have in front of you the basis for the PR, the press releases, and the flyer. This is the one flyer we're going to be using. If there's anything, the flyer will be hopefully will be on the front of it. But there won't be any branding.
Yeah, I think in terms of the Cnet production, there'll be something in the credits that'll say Cnet production sponsored by Patton Township.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we support the request from this group to sponsor their Cnet production.
I
Can I get a second?
second.
Discussion.
We got one member of the public who'd like to comment.
Can I get
I don't
Supervisor
know if I need
Abrams
an
first?
amendment to do this, but I wanted to make sure we document it as a art presentation, artistic presentation.
I think the primary documentation will be the discussion of this at this meeting, so we'll make sure that it gets included in the minutes.
And no, I don't need an amendment.
Yeah, correct.
All right, you're saying we have
Mr. Haney,
Mr. Taylor?
yeah.
Mr. Haney.
Yeah, hi.
I'm
I
sorry.
have, I mean, I certainly have some thoughts, I guess, on this more recent one, but I had asked earlier to talk about the mask ordinance, and I had raised my hand after that was done, and I think it got put down. I don't know if it was
Sorry.
intentionally
I'm sorry.
or inadvertently, but I didn't have an opportunity there. But I think if I'm commenting specifically on this, I would want to know more about, you know, is this beyond what is said? I mean, is it political in nature? I mean, that's something that I would have curiosity about myself, hearing about that, or where the motives are, or how that goes, and if the township sponsors politically, I guess, sided events.
All right. We know it's not political. No?
I would ask Mr. Dumas.
Mr. Dumas?
I'm not sure of the question. Can we have can you clarify the question again, please? I'm sorry.
Could you repeat your question, Mr. Haney?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I know that the Innocence Project takes a lot from Open Society Foundations, which is George Soros, so I'm just curious if there's any political alignment with the event that's being discussed here, and if the township is putting money towards something that has a political agenda within it, sort of beyond, you know, obviously what was said, which in favor of it, which nobody would argue on the face is inappropriate.
The Innocence Project, first of all, there is no, at present, there's no local Pennsylvania, well, there's a Pennsylvania Innocence Project, but there's no local, either Patton or State College or any other local Innocence Project. This is in the process of trying to form it. And it's, the purpose is not political. The purpose is helping those people who have been improperly or inappropriately incarcerated. So there's no overtly or covert political thing that I know. It's one of the sponsors. Does that answer your question, sir? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was. I've seen some of the work that the Innocence Project's done, and particularly with Rodney Reed and some of those other things, and they seem very political, so just was posing what your take was on it, and if there was any sort of agenda back to it.
My primary take on it is that it's, I know the piece, I know, you know, the James Older Johnson, God's Trombones piece. It's a wonderful cultural thing, and to, where the money goes once it gets past the pockets and the baskets of folks who come, I am not cognizant of or conscious of. I believe, as I said, and as my colleague has said, that it is, the purpose is to help those people who have been inappropriately incarcerated. It is not to espouse any political agenda that I know of, and certainly it's not for an organization that is in the process of coming into existence as opposed to an organization that is already in place. This is not the Innocence Project nationally. This is trying to establish a local organization which is going to help those people who are inappropriately incarcerated.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize, like, the person is political, and a lot of things are actually political. What I'm hearing here is that this is not going in favoring one political party.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so when we're talking about health, when we're talking about education, when we're talking about transportation, housing, all that stuff is political. And yes, there are certain individuals, donors who may back some of these sort of like causes, but I don't think that's cause to shut down, you know, something like this.
I agree with you, Supervisor. Totally.
Any other comments?
The only thing that does come to mind is, and I guess this is something to do later, but maybe altering the donation policy. Since there was a lack of clarity with the donations will not be made to religious organizations. And since there's religious organizations, I guess, potentially involved in this, but it's funneling those resources, I guess, to this broader Innocence Project, but they're not local. I think there may just need to be some clarity around this donation policy, but don't need to work on that now.
Yeah.
I think the current policy about not donating to religious organizations is fine, and the way this has been explained, we're not. So, now, that's open to interpretation by different people, and,
Oh, okay.
but I don't think it requires a change in the ordinance.
Mr. Rima Young, comment?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to interject and also thank Terry Watson and Charles Dumas for speaking on behalf of this event. I am also a part of this event, so I just wanted to also chime in on the gentleman's question about affiliation. So really the purpose of this project for the donations is to go directly to the exonerees. So there is an emergency fund that the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, and I want to be clear, there's a difference between the Innocence Project and the Pennsylvania Innocence Project. So they all have separate lines of funding and support and how they do their work. Similar goals though. But these donations would be going towards emergency funds for exonerees. So in the state of Pennsylvania, I think they support around 30 exonerees thus far who come out and they don't receive a dime from the state or anyone else when they are exonerated. So this is to help to get them on their feet and support them along the way. And so we are trying to raise $10,000 this year. And so this is kind of the kickoff during Black History Month for us to be able to serve to do that. So I just wanted to clarify that so that nobody misunderstands where the funds are going.
Thank you so much, Ms. Young. We're having technical difficulties at this point. If we can, Supervisor Abrams?
Well, actually, now that it's brought up in this way, actually could be a way of saving money, because if you help people that have no basis of support who have been found to be exonerated, you don't want them to pick crime as another option. And if they are able to make their lives better than they were, then that's good for everybody.
So, Sultana,
Just last point on this. And so what we're saying here, then, that it's not going to a religious organization, it's going to the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, so I get that. But the Pennsylvania Innocence Project is not a local organization, and I think that's
not, if I may sort of correct that, the Pennsylvania Innocence Project covers Pennsylvania. What this is, what Run is trying to do is establish a local version of it, which is not established yet. Okay?
Okay.
There's no
That's okay.
Center County Innocence Project. We're in the process of trying to do that.
That's helpful.
okay.
Shurima had her hand up again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Young, I see your hand up again. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I just want to clarify this as well. It's not that we're trying to start our own. We are trying to support the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, which helps inmates across the state. So inmates come from central Pennsylvania to Pittsburgh to Philly. They come from all throughout the state, these individuals, and they are getting letters day by day from inmates across the state. And it takes about 10 years for them to even be able to address the legal process of some of these inmates. So this is definitely a local issue. Speaking of the prison that's in our backyard, so we could definitely have inmates in there writing to the Innocence Project. So to me, it's the business of all Pennsylvanians to try to support those who've been wrongfully convicted, and that includes folks in our area as well.
Thank you, Ms. Young, for clarifying.
I'd like to amend my remarks to reflect those of my colleague.
Take a short break. Do anyone need a short break?
Good idea.
I'm good.
Can we take a 5-minute break? Thank you.
to you.
I'm gonna keep moving. I'll let him know he can speak after public safety.
He did say he wanted to speak about masks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, Heather's Taylor.
Oh, and I think he can hear us.
All right.
So you might want to just have him speak.
Taylor,
Why don't you gavel us back in?
I'm sorry,
Open the meeting again.
hold on. I'd like to open up the meeting. My question to you, do you have a question right now? Because I know we've been having problems with the hand raising.
I do have some questions. I had some questions and maybe some comments on the mask mandate
All right.
ordinance, I guess, that's been put in place, so I do have some questions on that, though.
Can you wait till after our public safety report?
I don't have too much time to hold on too much longer, honestly. I sort of was there at the beginning too, so if preferred, I'd prefer to address it now.
All right, then I'll give you the opportunity to speak, and after we'll do the public safety. Okay, your question?
Yeah, I mean, my question is, at first I'm very strongly opposed to the mask mandates ordinances, just to put that out there. I'm sure I have a different opinion than those on the board. I sort of find, in some of the listening and conversations, I sort of detest that there's, creates this like pitting of people against other people. And, you have instances where people are calling out businesses, they feel like they're calling out other citizens of the township. It doesn't create the type of environment as a resident that I think is good for us, especially after 2 years in. I have some curiosity about really two things. One is the number in which the ordinance would lift. And that is, from what I read from the ordinance, a case of 50 out of 100,000 people. It's like 50 cases out of 100,000, which is, it's like 0.05%. But of that 100,000 for Center County, I'm not sure I understand why the metric is Center County when we're 15,000 people out of 160,000, and why that's the measure. So I guess that's sort of my first question.
I can
Supervisor
I can take
Whitman?
that. That number was recommended by the Board of Health in the State College Borough. Patton Township does not have a Board of Health, so the closest body of experts, geographically closest body of experts, was the State College Bureau of Health. So we went with that number, which is what they recommended for the borough ordinance. So we based this, wrote the ordinance out of our concern for public health.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, although, I'm certainly not a member of State College Township or the borough, and so, I'm not going to start going to their meetings to listen to how they arrived at their numbers, and, just saying that we sort of defer to another township is, while I understand what you're saying, it feels like it sort of misses the mark, because I know nobody can really explain why that is, other than just it was the recommendation of a medical attaché to the borough.
Can we get your second question?
Yeah, my second question is what sort of direct evidence does the board have that a mask mandate within our township, while it's one of seemingly 2 out of 5 or 6 surrounding, has an impact, or what direct impact can we point to the mask ordinance and reduction of actual spread or cases, in particular with most people wearing cloth masks, which we now know does very little to stop the spread compared to N95s or other masks, which most people don't seem to be wearing just from a non-scientific observation of being here for the last couple of years.
Supervisor Whitman.
I can attempt and answer that. So we do not have any direct evidence in Patton Township, and it's unlikely that we would have direct evidence in Patton Township because I don't know that any research is being done directly on Patton Township or on the center region on the impact of masks, but this, the crafting of this ordinance was based on studies that had been done, scientific studies published in juried scientific journals that show the impact of wearing masks. And of course, there are many other agencies that have posted this scientific information, like the Centers for Disease Control. So it was using that scientific data that the wearing of masks of any kind actually reduces the transmission of the coronavirus, whatever variant. I'm well aware that the N95 masks are far superior to cloth masks, and I've made a personal choice to use that. For us to craft an ordinance at the level of asking people to comply by wearing a specific kind of mask, that would be actually very hard to enforce and may put a hardship of cost on some people. And given that the evidence thus far indicates that wearing of some kind of mask, even if it's the proverbial chain link cloth mask that does let a lot of particles through, that it actually does reduce, to a certain extent, the transmission of the COVID virus. So that is the basis for our decision on this ordinance.
Supervisor Abrams.
I appreciate the freedom argument, although I do recall when I was starting officer training school at Lackland Air Force Base in Texas in the early 1970s, and they said we had to get a yellow fever shot, we had to get some other fever shot. Nobody said that our freedom was being taken away. In fact, maybe our health was being helped by it. So people did it. So I think there are a lot of other places where we should maybe even be stronger about our freedoms. But this to me is so what? You're wearing a mask. When my wife and I visited our daughter-in-law and son in Taiwan, a lot of people there were wearing them 10 years ago if they had a cold. It was just a practice, cultural practice. They would have told them they had to.
Well, I don't see any issue if any one person wants to wear a mask.
Hold on, Mr. Henry. Supervisor Magruder.
Yeah, the only comment I had is that it would be very impractical for, I guess, Patton Township specifically to hire out or have individuals conduct research studies on basically most things that we do here in Patton, whether it be with transportation, whether it be with health, education. It's a very extensive process, expensive process, lengthy process to actually conduct that specificity of research. Thus, we sort of look to other institutions with this expertise and knowledge and resources to actually conduct this research in order to then provide guidance on a whole range of different operations and functionings of different municipalities. And so that's what I wanted to say.
And what I would like to say is we, as a board, just attended the general forum, and our report came from Mount Nittany in support of getting vaccinated and how important it was to wear a mask. So as the other municipalities received this presentation from Mount Nittany. I think we as a board are taking heed to our hospital representative who has the data and actually asked each municipality to get the word out. So as we continue to work and get the word out of wearing masks and the face covering ordinance to be in effect, we understand and we hear all sides, the pros and the cons. But the most important part is information that's saving lives. So, Mr. Haney, I would like you to ask your last question so we can move forward.
Oh, yeah, sure. I just want to clarify, I was not making any freedom argument, and I was not making any argument against any effectiveness within masks, because while I probably disagree with those on the board, and I've read different studies that I'm sure contradict the studies that have been read, it's more about the fostering that it creates within our community, about people turning other people over, turning businesses in, for the sake of something that has been admitted, and I understand the premise of it, but that there's no direct evidence from our township, that our township, out of 1 versus 4 or 5 other townships not having it, somehow stops the spread to a number, and it's just based on other localities and some anecdotal evidence or guidance from different members in the community. So I find that disturbing, but that's sort of the end of what I had to say. So thanks for the conversation.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Next on the agenda is our public safety. I would like to welcome Sergeant Chupanko. Doug?
Yep, Matt, why don't you go ahead and
All right.
give us our report.
Pleasure to be here. A little earlier than normal. Usually it's about 80 degrees warmer when I give the board report in the summer. But in front of you, you should have the December 2021 police report. And it's fairly routine and uneventful, which is probably what you want to hear. Traffic stops, citations, and arrests were generally on par with what happened in 2020. The disparity in parking tickets, I think, might have been from a snow emergency. That usually bumps the parking ticket numbers up a little bit. Under department notes, a couple incidents to mention. A juvenile was charged with making terroristic threats and disorderly conduct stemming from some concerning comments that he made in the school. And those types of things are taken very seriously, and we want to make sure that the correct actions were taken in that. Another juvenile was charged with simple assault and harassment when they struck another family member with a weapon that resulted in an injury. Had a 19-year-old male who was cited for disorderly conduct for his behavior in a public parking lot of a township business. And some of the other arrests for the month included 1 for public intoxication, 6 for retail theft, and 3 for driving under the influence. And then officers successfully served 3 of the 5 warrants they attempted. There is 1 use of force incident to report of the 413 incidents and 141 traffic stops and 20 arrests. There was 1 use of force, and that occurred when officers attempted to serve a 302 warrant or a mental health warrant on a subject who needed to go to the hospital for an evaluation. And that subject, the officers actually spoke to him for about an hour trying to get him to go up peacefully, and he absolutely didn't want to go, so they had to grab his arms and place them behind his back and handcuff him. But no one was injured, and that individual got up to the hospital to get the treatment he needed. The next item on it is the community relations. Officer Tuskovich gave a couple presentations to the schools. We helped out with traffic control for the Nittany Valley Half Marathon. Officer Tuskovich and Chief Jolly met with representatives from the Center Sports Complex to discuss their safety plan. If you don't know about them, they're the sports complex out near the airport, and they host some pretty big events with a lot of people, so making sure that they do everything safely and have emergency plans in effect is real important, so they're on top of that. The other thing we did is in November, the police department, in conjunction with Ferguson Township Police, we did our own fundraising, and we put the proceeds to that for our annual Shop with a Cop event, which helped families in need during the holiday season. And I think we raised about $4,000, and it went to 15 children who helped out with their Christmases, and I think other donations were made to the State College Food Bank and Salvation Army. Not a lot of training in December. There was a tactical response team training that our tactical team members went on, and then Sergeant Albright, who's our accreditation manager, attended an accreditation meeting in December, and that's important because the accreditation provides a framework to make sure that all our policies are run efficiently, and make sure the police department runs efficiently and is accountable. A couple photos that the chief included in the packet. Joe Wirtz is our hardworking crossing guard out of Grayswoods Elementary, and it looks like he took a day off and Santa Claus filled in for him one day. And then there's a photo of Officer Tuskovich with a couple Ferguson Township police officers who did the Shop with a Cop presentation. And then there's also a performance report in there for Detective Tom Snyder on a case that he handled. You can read it for the details, but suffice to say the paragraph written there does not do justice to the work that he did on behalf of those victims. He worked very hard on that, and it worked out very well. And then you have the call list. No real surprises. 413 calls total. November was 427. The leading calls were traffic calls, and then health and safety ambulance assist type calls. So no surprises, nothing out of the ordinary, just fairly routine, hard work as usual. If you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. If I can't answer them, I'd be happy to research them and get back to you with an answer though.
All right, any of the supervisors? Questions? Supervisor Whitman?
I would just like to say that last year I ran into Joe Works at at Home Depot or Lowe's, and recognized the name immediately, and so had a response like that, and he graciously said yes, he was doing the Santa work. It was just a lovely way to run into him. So very nice thing that he does. That's kind of cool.
Any other supervisors?
No, I just wanted to echo, is it Officer Snyder?
It's Detective
Snyder. Okay. Yeah, Detective Snyder, sexual assault is a serious thing, and I think this speaks to, I don't know the intricacies of it, but going above and beyond to do what's needed. And a lot of times with these things, there's a lot happening under the surface, and it takes people who are, committed to finding that truth and advocating on behalf of survivors to do justice. So I'm glad that this had a global effect too. So props to Detective Snyder.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your report.
No problem. If anything comes up, I'm sure Mr. Erickson can get a hold of me. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda is 5, Public Works Operations. There are no items. Number 6, Engineering, Planning, and Zoning. 6A is Planning Commission Report. Welcome, Commissioner, is it Jim Payne?
Yep. Go ahead, Jim.
Jim.
Good evening, everyone. Our January 10th Planning Commission meeting was mostly organizational. Election of officers, Brian Rader as chairman, Rich Smith as vice chair, Bill Burnett as secretary, and Jim Payne as alternate secretary. We approved the meeting dates and times for the year, and also for Center Region Planning Commission representative. There's a couple of questions on that, but we'll straighten that out. Brian Rader will probably be the rep. Alternates, Sharon Collins, Jim Payne, and Rich Schmidt will probably be in there too. We discussed bicycle parking. Trish Meek from Center Region Planning Agency gave a kind of a recap on what we've gone through before and the changes that were made to the ordinances, which is in your next item on the agenda. We also heard a report from Patton Township Housing Task Force, where Kristen Vanacek talked about housing challenges and goals, and Andrea Pandolfi gave us some
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You could also
Supervisor.
have a picture of the township toad if we want.
What, the what?
The eastern spadefoot
The
toad,
spadefoot toad.
our township amphibian.
There's not a picture somewhere in here?
There used to be a top, I'll have to find it for folks. I thought we had one in here.
No, I agree with making it.
There's one, I got one in my office, yeah.
Okay,
More modern.
That's a bit of township history we should
okay,
bring back up every once in a while.
sounds good.
Okay, I have the information I need, thank you.
You're welcome.
Larry's got his hand up.
Larry?
Yeah, based on the comment earlier about, and since contact information came up as a few of you wanted to include that, in that contact information, do you want to include pictures and a bio of the board? I have never done that because I was leery about putting too much personal information out there. I mean, pictures obviously doesn't matter, but
We can write our own bio, so we.
that's what I was gonna ask
Yeah,
next.
I like it.
If you guys can write a bio and send it to us, and if you have a picture you prefer, you can send that to me. I will make sure that Sophie puts it in there prior to them migrating it over to the new website.
Okay.
Can I put a picture in when I was 30 years old?
You can put a picture in there when you were 30 months old, Jack.
We're not gonna be misrepresenting
I
ourselves
haven't have
now.
anything from that long ago.
And you're not, Larry, you're not saying this stuff will be going on the homepage. It would be a separate,
It will not go on the home page, but it will go under the contact information.
So there'll be a button on the homepage
Yeah.
probably that says contact information, and then, so that one click should take you to a new page that has
All
the supervisors listed and contact, email, phone number if you want it, and then your, probably a link from there to the bio and photos.
could all the staff have their pictures then if they wanted?
All the what?
All the staff?
Well,
We can certainly do all the stuff with pictures.
Usually-
I wouldn't do bios for everybody on the
Usually
staff.
Not
supervisors.
But pictures we certainly can do if we want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you need my picture, but.
If people want.
Yeah, I think it would be
It'd
up
be
to
inclusive
the
and stuff,
staff.
like this is all of ours, and here we all are.
Yeah, just for what it's worth, I would also like to see contact information, photos, a group photo at least, of our various authorities, boards, and commissions. And names, actually, of people who are on the planning commission and on
That was attached to the agenda.
You can take take some of those pictures on February 11th.
I'm trying to think of the other, the Parks and Rec.
Okay.
I think people like to know those things, and then they say, oh, I'm gonna talk to my neighbor about a park.
Doug, is that?
Well, there's a philosophical issue that we can talk about at some point about is it the function of the committee that's important, or the people that are on the committee that's important?
Yeah,
That's a
well,
philosophical.
I do like to know individuals, because it's the individuals that I talk to on the street. Yeah, it is philosophical. But I'll put in my my philosophical 2 cents.
Okay, Larry,
But
did you
yeah,
have
right.
a question? Did you have a comment? Larry?
No, that's, the only comment I had was on the bios, and, I would hope that everybody could write their own, because I wasn't gonna have Sophie write one for everybody, that's.
Okay,
Fair enough.
we got it.
I like it.
All right. Doug, is that all you need?
Got what I need, thank you.
All right, moving next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that you would like pulled or to discuss at this time?
Move approval.
I have a move to approve.
Second.
I've got a second. Discussion.
Madam Chair, In the consent
Supervisor.
agenda, there's number E, the proclamation for Lunar New Year. I know you and I had a short talk earlier, and you were considering adding some kind of a recognition of Black History Month. Were you thinking of doing that tonight or at a later meeting?
We can, I think we were going to wait till the 9th.
A
Supervisor
later
Witt.
meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
It's a whole month though.
yeah. Okay, I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Moving on, the manager's report. Doug?
Development update from the planning commission was included in the agenda. Provided you a copy of a notice that we sent out to residents in the, out by the airport, let me put it that way, giving them information that was provided to us from the Department of Environmental Protection concerning what they are calling an emerging groundwater issue that involves chemicals called PFASs. And you can read that if you want more information. Anybody with questions, I really am going to refer you back to DEP, because those folks are the real experts, and there's a couple of phone numbers and email addresses included on that information that went out from the township. So, and I've talked to Ms. Sinclair a couple of times, and she's more than happy to answer people's questions. So, also there was an audit report from the state on liquid fuels tax fund. No findings on that. Announcements: we did receive another grant from the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, DCNR, for Burnell Road Park Phase 2. We got a grant last year for $155,000 or 150, I can't remember exactly. We got, which was short of what we needed, so we got another 125,000. That's enough so we can get that project rolling this year. So at some point we'll be getting that out for bids and bringing back a recommendation to award that project later this year. Township events. Office closed on the 21st, office closed on April 15th for carpet cleaning. We've got between 40 and 50 RSVPs for the ABC dinner, so I think we're a go. Unless people want to cancel it, we need to cancel by Friday if we're going to cancel. Nope, so we're good, we're going. February 11th, out at Toftrey's Resort, same place. Menu's been selected. I will work on the programming and get that all out to you hopefully next week. And I think that's all you need to know for today.
All right, thank you, Doug. Next on the agenda is the committee reports. Is there any board supervisor that would like to comment on their report at this time? Supervisor Abrams.
In the Lucy Committee, one thing that came up, they were talking about the difference between master plans and land development land development decisions. And the thing you have to go by when you look at what's actually there and has actually been approved is the land development plan. It's brought in, that gets approved. Master plan can be changed all over the place. And so some people will say, like in 10 years, oh, well, 10 years ago, the master plan said we had to do this, and so we have to. But in the meantime, the other land development plans may have come along and decided something different. And that's what actually applies at the moment. So we have to be alert for that.
Okay, thank you. Any other supervisors would like to, Supervisor Whitman?
Yeah, I want to say this because it's also important that the public know this. I was at the Solar Power Purchase Agreement Working Group meeting this morning, and I'll be making a report officially for the next agenda. But if anyone here or the public has any questions about this Solar Power Purchase Agreement, the solar array that has yet to be decided a location for, the working group requests that individuals seek out the representative from each township or each entity that is a partner or part of the purchase agreement. So in Patton Township, that would be myself or Larry Pager. And I just put that out there. If I receive a question from anyone in the public, I will then convey that to Gretchen Brandt, who's the new chair. So, and I'll have a more lengthy report printed in the next agenda.
Supervisor Whitman, would you like to tell the public the committee that you're reporting on? What's the name of your?
It was the Solar Power Purchase Agreement Working Group.
Okay.
That's what I, led with.
All right.
So that's the report that I'm,
Okay.
yeah, it's not a committee, it's called a working group, but it's listed as a
Oh,
committee.
okay,
Sorry.
gotcha.
Yep.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, moving right along. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I just note, attached to the agenda, there is a list of everybody who's been appointed, item 14.1. That's the list of all the appointments for all the ABCs. And that's also available on our website now.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Can I get a second to the adjournment?
Yep.
Second? All in favor?
Yay, aye. Did I say
Thank you all. This meeting is now adjourned.